Hey friend, welcome and welcome back to noseyAF, conversations about art, activism, and social change. I'm your host and friend, Stephanie Graham, and today I am so delighted because you and I are going to have a total geek fest about Lisa Ben, who created the first known lesbian magazine back in the U.S. in the 1940s. To lead our obsession today, we have my new friend, Dr. Kate Henry, who is a writer, a scholar, a poet, an all-around brilliant femme powerhouse who studies queer history through archives, rhetoric, and storytelling. Kate has also created Lisa Benography, which is an accessible public scholarship project about Lisa Ben. So in this conversation, we're going to get into Lisa Ben's stories, queer archives, lost histories, public scholarship, creative writing, and really like what it means to honor people who came before us and, simple like how we could start our own archive. Kate is super passionate, super thoughtful, super smart, funny. I absolutely loved our conversation, and I really think that you will too. So let's get into it. You know I love the theme music, and we're going to get right into our conversation with Kate. Welcome to noseyAF.
Gotta get up, tell the whole world you a winner. Vision of a star with a mission and a cause. What you doing, how you doing, what you doing, and who you are. Flex yourself, impress yourself. Check yourself, don't wreck yourself. If you know me, then you know that I be knowing what's up. Hey, Stephanie Graham is nosy as
Dr. Kate, welcome to noseyAF.
Thank you for having me. I'm stoked to talk to you about this stuff.
It is such an honor. I have to tell the audience, so Dr. Kate and I, can I also call you Kate just for
just
conversation?
Call me Kate.
Thank you. Kate and I are in a writing group together. And in the writing group, Kate gave a class about being productive and how to write our own productivity practice. And that class was awesome, number one. But in the class, what stood out to me was when you were introduced to someone who studied queer history. And it just made me think how come I didn't think to study queer history? How can one even think to study queer history? Because how I was raised, queerness and just, I guess, non-queerness, all of this had to do with who was in your bedroom. And really, that's nobody's business. So to me, how would one know if something is a part of queer history? So I would just love to know if you can just talk about how you even started to think of that as something to study.
I mean, I think to speak to that question, my research in queer history, I was looking specifically at the 1940s through the 1960s in Los Angeles. So at that time, people didn't want people to know who was in their bed with them. That was not a time that many folks were super out for many reasons that I can probably talk about today. But to answer your question, I have a PhD in rhetoric and composition, and
which means
it means rhetoric and composition, they get grouped together. And a lot of folks who study it, they're studying how we teach writing. So composition is really teaching folks to teach writing, how folks are composing essays, things like that. And rhetoric gets grouped in. Rhetoric, Aristotle would say it's the art of persuading someone. But I think about rhetoric as how are we influencing someone to think or believe or behave in a certain way. And for example, Fox News has incredibly effective rhetoric because they have propaganda. They have things that make people freak out and feel fear-mongering, things like that. That's an example of rhetoric. It could be used for good or for ill. And when I started the PhD in rhetoric and composition, I applied to study critical pedagogy because I had been teaching college writing for a few years, and because I did my MFA in poetry before I did the PhD, and critical pedagogy, I was really interested in how we could teach in a way to make the classroom a more democratic place and teach how folks could use writing in a way to dismantle power structures, so I was stoked to study how we can, teach writing. And then my first semester of the PhD, I took a class on feminist historiography, which I'll say what that is in a moment. But that class was about writing women's histories. And historiography, which is really where I would situate myself as a scholar, is looking at how history is created, and also studying history. So historiography is like the study of how we write history. And as you can imagine, when we look at that through a feminist lens, we're seeing a lot of people's voices have not been recorded.
Yeah.
A lot of what we would call rhetoric or performances of thought is happening in spaces outside of the institution of academia or government or places of power. So feminist historiography was my way in because I was thinking, who are all these women or queer voices that we don't have access to or who have been remembered in an incredibly problematic way.
Yeah.
And that got me hooked in thinking about how have we thought about or recorded or not recorded the way that people have written.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. It makes me think is this podcast a historiography? I don't know.
I mean, you're recording, and we'll talk about archives today a lot, but it is creating an archive of folks' stories. And so I got interested in doing this, looking at queer history. My entry point was thinking about feminist historiography and how women's stories have been or not recorded.
Yeah.
And then that led me to think sort of then approach this through a queer theory lens or looking at queer stories as well.
Yeah. And one other thing you said with rhetoric also makes me think of charm and influencers too.
Yeah. When I would teach rhetoric, which I did a ton, in grad school, I got paid to teach writing. And the first things we teach are the rhetorical appeals of ethos, pathos, and logos. So appealing to emotion, appealing to logic, appealing because you have professionalization, right? So totally, those are happening. The influences are using those in a way to sell us things.
Yes. So when you started to get into this work, what were some things that maybe surprised you?
Yeah. Well, when I got into it, I guess I was surprised. I was pleasantly surprised that feminist historiographers and rhetorical scholars who are studying women's rhetorics were situating or valuing rhetoric outside of academia. So a lot feminist rhetorical scholars will talk about this being done in the parlor or in the person who I research, who we'll talk about today. She would do things at parties with other queer folks, So that was a pleasant thing to see. Oh, there are these places that people are gathering and having these conversations and educating themselves and one another. And that was really delightful and felt, I don't know, was valuing that kind of, I finished my PhD 5 years ago and I'm really interested in thinking about this stuff through more general language instead of just saying the rhetorical performance, not just that, but just thinking hey, it matters that people are having these conversations and creating written pieces or creating speeches or music or art in these places outside of places that give them permission to do it academia.
Right. Or spaces that are cultural spaces. It can just happen at the gas station or grocery store kind of a thing. Yeah. Which is good, right? Because then that makes it more accessible.
Oh, certainly. And that is, I'm very interested in accessibility, which I know we're going to talk about with public scholarship. So I can wait to bring that in or I can talk about it.
Yeah, let's go there. Yeah, okay. Let's talk about public scholarship. I love that.
I love it. So I
never heard of it before you.
Oh, I am obsessed. And one thing that bums me out is I did a master's and then I did a PhD in rhetoric and composition. So 7 straight years. And there wasn't a ton of training or classes or things about public scholarship. And I really regret that. So to understand what public scholarship is, let's think about traditional academic scholarship. So that is by academics, trained scholars, happens within the institution, people professors who are publishing journal articles or something. And
And I think
there's
of scholarship
yeah.
as like free.
Yeah.
Like you have
Yeah.
a scholarship. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have like the scholarship, the stuff they're producing, and then there's independent scholars who are folks who are like not tied to a university, but they're trained as an academic researcher and writer, and they still publish in like the academic spaces. They're just doing it on their own. And then there's public scholarship, and this is where I want to situate myself. And this is folks who are like potentially trained as a scholar, academic scholarship training, but they're publishing intentionally public spaces for audiences outside of these like highly trained academic spaces, and they're doing things in a way to make it more accessible. Or at least that's the way I would approach this. So not using all the academic jargon that you have to use in academia to prove that you are a successful academic and contributing to the field. And a lot of public scholarship is also done with folks in the community. So you're like creating something, maybe it's like a report with your, I don't know, town's like library or something.
Yeah.
So it's like you're creating something with the group that you are publishing this, even if you are bringing your training as an academic scholar into that. And that really aligns with my personal values and interest in making my research as accessible as possible to folks. Yeah.
It makes me think of like in art, they have social practice or like public art where folks might like work with, maybe it's the elders in the community or it's like the moms in the community or, whatever. And like we all work together to create a performance together or like we work on a mural together, those types of things, but just like in like written form or, or like a website or something to like, or even like zines or something. Yeah. Like a way to distribute information.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Like I think of public scholarship as like I have a website I created or like podcasting or like people's newsletters and things like this. Like I think like this is still like, I mean, you could define scholarship however you want. Like we're not in academia. We don't have to say it fits all the criteria we would need to get tenure with it or something. So like, are you like teaching someone about something? Are you like discovering something? Like I really love that idea of making this more widely accessible and helping it like to benefit the public. And this has been something that's been 5 years since I finished my PhD. And I write all the time and I write publicly all the time, but I'm still learning new ways to write and say what I want to say through public scholarship outside of academia. Like it's like I have to like detox from it.
I have a question. So like in order to be considered an academic, do you have to have a degree?
No.
Or can it be like like you could call yourself a academic?
I mean, I feel like you can.
Yeah.
That makes me think of folks who are like, well, I'm not a writer.
Yeah,
I
that's
haven't published a book. My book's not on the New York Times list. I'm not a writer. You know? And I'm like, no, you're a writer. Like, so I don't know. Like I like in academia, there are certain like milestones that folks hit. Like you're, an assistant professor or a full professor or this professor. And like they come with potentially more job security or more pay, or more or less responsibilities. And they're based on like your contribution to the field, whether that's how much you've published or like how much you're advising folks or, whatever those things are. But yeah, I think you could be I think that me as like little 5-year-old Kate who loved to read was an academic, like we don't need to, I don't think we need to gatekeep being an academic if you like have a degree or you're in college or something like that's.
Yeah. I love it.
Other people will feel differently about that, and that's cool.
Well,
that's
they
my
don't matter.
Personal opinion.
Right. This is all, we're all going by what Kate says today. It's like what you say goes. It reminds me of, I have a friend who works at a school, like a grade school, and when he does the announcements, he always calls all the students scholars. And I think it's just so cute.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I'm like, that's so smart. I love that. Because I feel like it makes you, the word scholar makes you want to puff up your chest a little bit. So I love it.
I like scholar more than academic.
Yeah,
personally.
I love it. So let's dive into your public scholarship project, Lisa Benography.
Yes. So to get here, so Lisa Benography is Lisa Ben and then biography. And
Yeah.
the woman who I've been researching for 11 or 12 years to this point, her name was Lisa Ben. But that was actually just her pen name, Lisa Ben, which is lesbian, but an anagram for lesbian. That's what Lisa Ben is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And her real name that she was born with was Edith Ide.
Okay,
And
that's also a good name.
It's Edith Deviney Ide. Deviney was her middle name. I know, classy.
I love that, yeah.
And but she is mostly talked about as by Lisa Ben. When she was alive, she died in 2015, but she preferred to go by her pseudonym, so that's what I've called her. I discovered Lisa Ben in, I think it was early 2014 when I was in grad school doing research, and just came across the magazine she wrote called Vice Versa, which is the first lesbian magazine in the United States that we know of. Maybe there's another one, but this is the one that we really count as the first. And she published it in 1947 and 1948. So I was just like fascinated with this magazine we have copies of it in the archive that are scanned and online, that she just was like writing about being a lesbian in the late 40s. Like, she was like a Scorpio. She did not hold her tongue. She said just what she felt. And I was so hooked because I'm really, up until that point, I was like interested in lesbian periodicals and how folks use them how they use the letter to the editor to like perform rhetoric, or like how they use the personals to like build community. Like, I think like periodicals are really magical spaces. So I discovered this in 2014, and like pretty much from then on out, like I just have been researching this one woman's work. And so my PhD is in rhetoric and composition. Even more specifically, I'm interested in the way discourse, like language and belief around certain ideas, circulates across different levels of media. So, for example, like in the 40s, 50s, 60s, when Lisa Ben or when I was looking at Ben's life, it was not a great person or not a great time to be a queer person. Yeah. Right? Like, we have laws like the Comstock law, which prevents mailing of anything with queer content. We have the Motion Picture Production Code, where you can't have representation of queers. Like there was, and then in 1950, we had the Lavender Scare, which is like McCarthyism. Like, queers are getting, like fired from government jobs, kind of like now.
Yeah,
but so like it was fascinating to read that she was sort of like pushing back against this and critiquing it and like acknowledging it and calling it what it was.
Yeah.
So I just like since then have been hooked. And Lisa Benography is a website that I created when I finished the PhD to basically like gather information about her and share this with folks. I thought like, I've been researching this person for so long. I know her so well. And I'm so passionate about this. I'm sure that I will cry today on this recording because I always cry every time I talk about her. Like, why not me make this website where I can make publicly accessible to folks, like information about her. I can create an archive, like collecting all the things about her and just make this like freely available to folks using language that is accessible. That's like different than like the like maybe like 6 people who are ever going to read my dissertation that I wrote.
Right. Yeah. It makes me like, the rule about the like not being able to mail queer content, like how do they know? Are they opening up envelopes and looking in there and seeing like pictures or something? Like, how would you know?
I don't. If you had asked me this 7 years ago, I would have been like, "Here's precisely how." I don't remember all of the stuff at the Comstock law, but I do remember. So, like, what Ben would do is she was a secretary at RKO Studios, and her boss was like, "I don't care what you do, you just have to look busy. You don't have much work to do." So she was like, "I'm going to make this lesbian magazine for my pals," and so she would like type it up at work and then like run it through with the like whatever the ditto paper was. Then. Yeah. Hand it out. And she like at first was mailing it, and her friends were like, "Girl, you don't want to mail that. You'll get arrested if you get caught. Like you can't." And it wasn't saying anything. It wasn't like pornographic. Right. It just was like talking about lesbians, right? Yeah. But it was like, no, you can't do that. Like this is just not okay. It's like not. It was considered obscenity. Like these were like obscenity laws at the time.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Wow. Shout out to Lisa. Did you ever get a chance to meet them?
I didn't. I was like, when she had passed away just like around like a year after I started researching her. I also know like she was like interviewed by a lot of folks in her life. It would have been lovely to have connected with her, but also I think I was like, just live your life, girl. Enjoy. Like, like I don't need to be another interviewer coming and knocking on your door in your 90s, but we're very fortunate that like the One archives in Los Angeles have all of her papers and her materials and things. And I've been able to go fly out. I'm in Boston, but like fly out there and like work with them before. So like we're really lucky that we still have so much of her letters and her everything that she's created in the archive.
Yeah, that's so great that you all have taken such, a keen to her work.
Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed. Like, I feel like this is like my life's work to just research and write about her and teach people about her. And I do, like, I have folks literally from all over the world who email me to ask me questions about her or like to fact check things or like one show and tell for you. I told you I have show and tell. Like when she passed away, there wasn't a obituary for her. So like if the New York Times made this book Overlooked, and it's about like underappreciated people who didn't get, the right kind of obituary. So like they interviewed me and like, so I'm cited.
Cool.
And like talking about her. You know what I mean? So it's cool that like, I just am like, I'm obsessed with this. I know so much about it. And people are like, hey girl, what about this? And I'm like, well, actually, blah, blah, blah. It's very cool. Like, it works really well for me to be like, this is the one thing I'm really good at and know a lot about.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is so awesome. And one thing I want to ask, because you come from both like creative writing and rhetoric, like how do those backgrounds like shape the way you approach like queer history and storytelling?
I mean, I feel like it helps me approach it because I just am like trained to write, like trained as like not just trained, like I like writing. I literally have like my whole life have been a writer and like have been like going to poetry camp since I was in middle school, like so I feel like my passion and interest in creative writing just means that I like want to write a lot, and that helps me to do this. And also like when I'm studying what Lisa Ben does, I've talked about vice versa, but she also was a musician who like some of the coolest stuff she did was create like queer parodies of popular songs at the time in a really poignant way. And so like as a creative writer, like I'm just fascinated with like what are the moves she's making? Like how is she writing and doing this? So like my training gives me this like lens that I can look through to think about like the circulation of like how is she like, I don't know, how is she doing a rhetorical move or whatever? But like I'm also just like amazed with how she was a writer her entire life. So there's a lot of content I can work with, like a lot of writing for me to play around with.
Yeah. I think for me, like when I think about like archival work, you think like not all of it's there, like you're like consistently gathering and like it involves like fragments, missing letters, incomplete stories, redacted materials. And it's just like, how do you navigate those absences, especially when they're telling like queer histories that were intentionally erased or hidden? Or like you don't or like you'll never know about maybe. Because it's just wild to me.
It is wild. And I feel like this is something that helps me to do the work that I do with researching Lisa Ben and like doing my public scholarship and now working on a book project about her. Like I have the privilege of time and energy and money to put towards this project. Like I made Lisa Benography. I paid for it. I paid for that. I built that website myself. It like,
looks great. I'll put it in the show notes.
It's got red cheetah print. So like there are some things that I'm like, oh, I can't find this here, but like maybe if I look at this other person's archive who was her friend and I can find this, like it's just like really incredibly time consuming to find stuff. And then I also think too, like the feminist historiographers, like sometimes will use tools like, triangulating. So like we know this thing, And we know that thing, but we don't know the third thing. But what can we like sort of ascertain or guess based on these other things that we know were happening at the time or the place? Like, how can we fill in these gaps if we want to fill in the gaps? Like,
Yeah.
that can be like a, like, you know, like literal, that's like literally a feminist move we learned in grad school to like, to be able to fill that in, right? Because there are things that will be missing. And it also makes me think too that like I had a professor in graduate school who was on my committee, and he would say that like, you know, in like his community before, he was queer too, and that like when someone would pass away, they would be like, let's hurry to their house and get their stuff before someone like burns it. Do you know what I mean? Like, especially like if it is like a queer history and like a family's like, no, we don't want that there. We don't want this out there, right? So like, I don't know. There are many things that are not there for whatever reason. Sometimes that's like a total like systemic, institutionalized, intentional erasure. Sometimes it's like, I don't know, so, like for whatever reason, we might not have things, and there are ways we can try to fill in the gaps. But then like, I don't know, there are also ways that we're like, we'll never know. And I think there's something like, I don't know, beautiful or like I want to honor that as well. Like it's sad, but I'm also like, well, if Lisa Ben didn't want something in her archive, then it was her life and not mine.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something like I really feel like a duty to her as the researcher to respect that.
Do you ever think about like your own legacy and archive while doing this work? Like if you're so much into Lisa Ben, what about like if folks look up Dr. Kate, they'll see Lisa Ben, but what about Dr. Kate? Life.
Yeah, I think about this like that's funny too, because I got married a few years ago and changed my last name. So like it's like also like my archive of me like having different names, where I did like the first like 3 years of my business were all for my old last name, and now it's different. So like what is there? I get to reinvent myself. I do think about this. I think about this a lot too, because and I talk about this a lot with my spouse, because we're a butch femme couple. I'm a femme. My spouse, Chris, is a butch. And Lisa Ben was a femme. She loved being a femme. She was so girly and loved cheetah print. But I think about this because I'm interested in like butch and femme histories as well. And like there's this historian, Joan Nessel, who helped us to have the lesbian histories archive, but she has this piece where she's writing about how the like lesbian and butch femme history from the 50s is a quiet past, and I have a tattoo of it on my arm. I have the word quiet past tattooed here, because she's like, when we're remembering and talking about like this like history of our like, for my queer ancestors, but for her, she actually was like, I was there. It's really, even if like this like butch femme history of like these like you know what we might call like heteronormative gender roles or something, or like might be like people might be like, I don't like that as much, like was like that's very, very close to my heart. So I think Chris and I, my spouse and I, talk about like, oh, like our queer archive, like the archive of our stuff together, and like how sweet that is. And also the like, again, feminist rhetorical scholars would say, like, archive doesn't have to be just what is behind the big doors at the ivory tower. Like, an archive can be like a shoebox of your grandmother's letters under your bed.
Oh, I like that.
Like, an archive can be anything that we are, like, gathering and keeping. Yeah, I don't know. It's cool. Like, I even, like, was thinking, I said to Chris the other day, I was like, you know, we don't take photos of us anymore. Like, when we first met, we took so many cute little photos of us, and like, we don't take photos anymore. And I'm like, we should be taking photos. Like, we should, like, that is the archive of us, or of me.
Yeah, there's an organization here, Chicago Alliance of African American Photographers, and like that's what they're all about. It's just like documenting Black people doing everything, because there's like such an absence of that. So it's like, even if you just see, you know, Black kids playing chess, like take a picture of it, you know, as best as you can, take the best picture, so that we can have like documentation of this life lived, doing this thing. Because, you know, at the time, you know, when some of these photographers, they're elders, they're like, it was just such a different look. So yeah, it's like so important too. It's so crazy how like, yeah, y'all documenting yourself is like like a history, like a political history in a way, just from existing.
I mean, I don't know. It's really tender and really sweet. And like, we don't necessarily think about this now, but like, how wild is it that I study something from like the 40s and I can still see like literally like some of the stuff in Ben's archive is from like, I don't know, 1915 or something before she was even born. And I can like hold it in my hands. And look at it, like, I just think that's so magical. And I think when she was like, she knew her stuff was going to go to the archive before she died. Like she was like, yeah, sure, you can have that when I die. But I don't know. I think a lot of us like she maintained her whole life. She was like, yeah, whatever. I just wanted to write this magazine to have friends. And like she is remembered as like the grandmother of lesbian publishing. And we have like the Lisa Ben Journalism Award. Like it's like interesting how she was like, I just want to write songs.
Right.
I'm like, why are you calling me an activist? I'm just like living my life, And like now she's like remembered as this huge, like important historical figure.
She's probably like, okay, girl, if you insist.
I mean, yeah, like and this is another thing too that like drives my interest in studying her is that she is remembered for writing Vice Versa. And like that was hugely significant. But she also was like, she was a sci-fi writer. She also was a musician. She also was like really passionate about adopting cats. Like there's like all these things that like me as the researcher, I'm like, oh, I know all of this other amazing stuff about her. She's not just Vice Versa.
Yeah. I think too what this makes me think of, do you know the singer Luther Vandross?
No.
So he was like a popular singer. I don't know when he passed, but the thing that people wondered about him, if he was queer or not. And then Patti LaBelle got into trouble because she was like, yeah, he was gay. Like afterwards, people were like, oh, that's not your place. That's not your place because you didn't necessarily see him ever out with anybody. But there was just like this thought about him. And it makes me think about how you were talking about how some people want things in their archive and some people don't. And so we'll never know if he wanted that to be talked about, like obviously, I think I do agree with people with them saying that maybe it wasn't her place to say that or not. But yeah, it's like if he wanted it to be known, he would have said so.
Yeah.
And I just find that so wild because if Lisa hadn't made this magazine, it makes me think like, what if she just kept this all to herself or, she just wrote like poems about going to get a beer and that was it. So you would never know about, like how, what all she became if she didn't so boldly speak about her experience.
Yeah.
Is it even boldly? Like, I mean, she's just making magazines for friends. So maybe she's not even boldly speaking about her experience.
I mean, I feel like this brings two things to mind. The first thing is that when she wrote Vice Versa in 1947, she was like really into the science fiction community in Los Angeles. She was the secretary for the Los Angeles Science Fiction Society.
Was she around Octavia Butler's time?
She moved to LA. She was born in 21. So like she was there in the 40s.
Okay.
I'm not sure. But she writes Vice Versa. And if like you're another show and tell for you.
Yes.
So she publishes, this is from 1960, so this is later. But like this is like a science fiction zine, the magazine of horror. And her sci-fi pseudonym was Tigrina.
I love it.
And you can see like she's in here with like H.P. Lovecraft and H.G. Wells. And like, so the layout for this is like just like a standard little thing. But vice versa, if you look at some of the other sci-fi magazines from then, it's like totally modeled after that. So it's like she writes vice versa because she's already reading these fanzines and these magazines and inspired by it. And I also too to like what she's doing and vice versa is she has like original poems, stories, but she's also doing like film reviews, music reviews, play reviews, and of anything that has like a queer character,
It's
which
just
is
a
huge.
publishing house.
Oh my gosh, she is so talented. And like this is so cool because there's many reasons for whatever reason folks wouldn't be able to see this content. So she's like giving reviews and telling people about it. But she's also and this is where the rhetorical performance stuff comes in. Like because in academia, you have to contribute to the field to get your PhD. I came up with this framework called queer rhetorical reeducation. And in very simple, like I hope simple words, like Lisa Ben at the time was like, hey, a lot of this stuff they're saying about us is really like messed up and it's problematic. And like, it's not cool that these newspapers or these plays or these films like have these queer characters like doing harmful things or like being like super like mentally ill. And so she's like calling that out, saying like, hey, this thing that we're being shown, it's not cool, not real. Instead, like, let me offer you this satire I wrote. And in this satire, like this straight guy wakes up one day and everyone around him is queer. And so it's weird that he's straight and everyone's queer, right? So like she's offering us these alternatives and like queering things. And like, so that's some of the like magical stuff that she's doing in this magazine, like offering these like, that's probably sci-fi influenced, but like how magical if you're a queer person at the time who's like, oh my gosh, I have to be closeted. I can't be out. I have to be careful, like I'm going to get rated if I go to the bar. And like you get to read this story where you're like, oh, how fun to like envision this utopia, right?
Right. It feels like a nice blanket wrapped around you. Sweet as that. Yeah. Lisa Benography is beautifully open. There's no paywalls, no jargon. And we know that accessibility is important to you. What challenges do you come up against while you're building like a project that sits between scholarship and public storytelling?
I feel like the challenge that I'm experiencing, even though some things have been easy, like it's easy to build the website, it's easy to do like the Google search to find examples of stuff, is that I want to continue making Lisa Benography the website because I like that it is publicly accessible. And as I said before, like I already know all this stuff. Why not like do the work to make it easier for other folks who are studying her to learn about her? But I also this year have started in earnest working on a book project about her. And I actually started this project. I was working with my coach, Camila Galaz, who I hired to help me with Lisa Benography. And the more she and I met and talked about it, we were like, this is a book.
Okay.
Like, hold on, this is a book. So the challenge that I'm encountering there is like, I'm like really excited about it, but I'm highly trained in doing academic writing. You know, like I'm highly trained at writing things like, this is queer rhetorical reeducation, and I'll do the analysis to prove it.
Yeah.
And right now, I am trying to write a book that is, you know, sharing Ben's story and like the amazing layers of her life that she's done beyond just vice versa. And also to like weave in the story of like what it is for me to be like also a femme who's doing this research and is like have been like so deep in it for years, and like to bring my passion to that. And it is just a new way of writing.
Yeah.
Like, to do this narrative writing, to do this memoir writing that is not like, I have the assignment and I've written it and I've used 10 citations and give me my stamp of approval, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's sort of like, hey man, if you want to write a book, no one's forcing you to do it. Like, you have to do it. You have to like write the anecdotes. You have to write the narrative and the storyline. And so the challenge that I'm encountering there is like, okay, man, I just have to like figure this out as I go, and I can have folks support me and read drafts, and I have my coach Camila, but it's also like, it is a challenge in that it's like a time for me to really strengthen my public scholarship writing and research skills in a new way that is like, I can bring some of the stuff that I learned in academia, of course, but like the actual thing that I'm writing and sharing and like hope to publish is not written in the same way as what I did for my PhD in rhetoric. And that's been a definite learning curve and very humbling.
Yeah, I bet. It seems like that would be like intense because it's like you're trying to do this project and then like learn a new way of thinking or applying at the same time.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's like, it's funny because like I coach people who are writing, and I'm like, if someone came to me and was like, I'm writing this book, I'd be like, cool, let's come up with a to-do list for you, right? Yeah. So like I can like come up with a to-do list, and then it's like, okay, you have to write, you know? And so I'm actually right now at a stage where I I've been already like writing down and recording all the stuff I already know. And I'm like, okay, it's time to return to the archive to find out new things. Like, I don't know. I'm learning things. Even like, I didn't know that she was born left-handed and like then forced to learn how to be right-handed. Like I've been researching her for like a decade, and I only learned this the other day by rereading like something that like a letter that she had written. You know, like
And she said it in the letter?
Yeah, like I think it was a letter where she said it, or like maybe it was an interview. I'm not even remembering now. But it's like, but the archive is just there are like thousands of photos I have that I've taken of things in the archive to wade back through. Yeah. And that's a challenge as well, being like, ooh, I just want to like be in these documents and read them and learn and love it. But I'm also like, no, you also need to be like writing down what scenes you want to write.
Right,
So like, there is the challenge there of like, well, like I also have to work. Like I can't just do this all the time. And it's like, as far as challenges go, it's an okay one to have, but it definitely is humbling to be like, unless like, not that I'm saying I could just like lickety split write a academic book for academic audiences, but this is a different sort of genre of writing.
Right. Yeah. I could totally see like, a girlfriend or even like kids in high school, like reading your Lisa Benography book, which is like great. So they have like a model to look at or just somebody else to be inspired by.
Yeah. I mean, that's my goal. And like, I feel like some feedback I've heard since the beginning of when I started researching her is like just how obvious it is how much I love her and how much I care about this and how like that gives folks like, I don't know, the opportunity to like, I don't know. There's like just something special that folks have told me that it is to hear me talk about that. Because it's not just like I'm like, she's my research subject,
Right,
like
right.
Something I really care about.
You really care about, yeah. I'm curious, like, what advice do you have for others who want to share their research or like creative work publicly without diluting its complexity?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. I'm like diluting its complexity. Well, I mean, like, if anybody wants to be in a support group with me, like recovering academics trying to write, like for public scholarship, like
I wonder if that's a group.
I mean, it is. I also was like, is there a conference? Like, I don't want to host it. But
I know that's right.
Yeah, like, I'm sure. Like, I'm like, I need to be, or like a salon. Like, I've often been like, do we need to have a salon where folks who are like me who know something really well just come and like teach and talk about it to other folks similarly? Yeah, but I mean, I would suggest for folks that, again, I feel that public scholarship is something that can be done, like it could be a newsletter or like you could like do like a guest pitch for someone else's newsletter, or you can give a talk or something like that. And I also think too, like I had to fly to California to go to this queer archive it's literally like a queer LGBTQ archive, right? To look at all this stuff. But there are like archives around, or like maybe like you could build your own archive.
Yeah.
Look through your letters. Like I have saved like every sweet greeting card, like every birthday card, every anniversary card. Like I've saved those for, I don't know, decades. And every now and then I'm like, let me go through all my cards.
Yes.
Like that's not an example necessarily of like this like highfalutin archive or something like that. But I think like there doesn't need to be like a huge entry, like a challenging entry point to it. Or like maybe you teach you and your friends like teach each other stuff. Or maybe you make a zine about it. Or maybe you like do an Instagram live and you just start talking about this thing that you know.
I love that.
I don't think there has to, in my opinion, like I understand, I'm talking about this where I'm like, yeah, we can all just make this stuff. But there are certain, like if you're like, no, I would like for there to be exchange value to the labor and time that I'm putting into this. Like I think there are ways that you could maybe like give talks or I do a lot of guest lectures in college classes. Like if anyone listening wants a guest lecture for your class, you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff is out there too.
I really love that. I really keep thinking about the whole archive in a shoebox. My show and tell for you, I have my grandpa's like his ID from when he worked at Hyde Park Academy. And like I just have it because like when we were clearing out his house, but I'm like, let me like make sure he has like not a shoebox, but like a nice box. Let me like gather all this stuff together and like keep it. Like maybe it's something I would go through and make a zine, or, you know, it doesn't have to be like, you know, public scholarship. Maybe it's personal scholarship. Could that be a thing?
Yeah.
Personal
Oh my gosh,
scholarship?
of course.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just made that up.
Or
I
like
just thought
something
of
you
that.
share for like, I don't know, like just with like a dinner party where
Yes,
folks are just sharing things with each other or something like that.
I would love that. They have those parties where I remember seeing on Instagram people, like friends would get together and they'll like make their goals, and they make little like PowerPoint presentations. Like what if we each like made like a little 15-minute presentation over like one person you studied, you know, or somebody in your family, and presented it. So I love that as the idea of a party.
Yeah. It also, that makes me think too, like some of a lot of the stuff in my archive, like my things from Lisa Ben, like places where she's been published or something, have been from eBay for like $20.
Oh,
You know
wow.
what I mean? So like there is, if you are interested in something, like another thing.
Yeah.
I'll show you that the first Christmas that my spouse and I were together, they bought me a record, like Lisa Ben recorded a song that was on like this little record.
Oh,
She
no
has, like,
way.
yeah, like 2 of her songs on here. And Chris bought it for me. I don't know. It was like less than $50 on eBay. And it's like one of however many that was printed in like 1960 of
Wow.
these things. And like you can listen to it, you know? So that is a cool thing. There's other stuff too. Like there's like this is a whole nother story, but like she was also like into the occult and into like, you know, like this stuff with horror and fantasy, and like a piece that she created is like online for like $1,000. Do you know what I mean?
Wow,
So like
yeah.
some things are like, but I know the people who they're selling it for $7,000. They had an extra copy that they gave to an archive. You know, so that's also something too, where I'm like, you might be able to find cool stuff, or like even like I also collect like women's magazines from the 40s, just because it's fascinating.
Yeah,
and they're like, I don't know, $5 a pop at a like antique store or something.
Yeah. I'm so inspired by your interest of the 40s. Maybe I'll pick a decade and like just sort of see what I can find in it that might interest me. I love that.
I think I got pulled to the 40s because as someone I think the butch femme stuff is really romantic. Like there's a lot, and Joan Nessel, who talked about the quiet past, which is on my tattoo, like, you know, we have there's a lot of lesbian consciousness raising and things from the 70s or, you know, or the 80s. And it's like, I don't know, like really inspirational in some ways, but also like really like butch femme phobic in other ways. So I was like, no, I'll do this. But like Lisa Ben was doing stuff her whole life. Like I could have studied what she did in the 60s, you know, but I was particularly fascinated by like what was happening in the 40s and the 50s. Yeah. It just was like, and again, like I guess I am a historian, even though I didn't have a like of course I am, you know, anyone, again, we can be historians.
We can
don't need to have a PhD in it. But yeah, it just was the one that I settled into. But you don't have to pick one.
That's true. I think what just inspires me about it is that I'm so used to, in my art projects, jumping from one project to another. And I think it's interesting when folks like pick one project and like stay with it forever, or for like 10 years, 15 years, you know? And I'm like so used to, okay, that's done. Now this one. And I'm trying to, you know, get myself to stick with one thing for a while. I had a studio visit where that was like a challenge, a suggestion. And I'm like, oh, you know, that is a good point. I do sort of bop around. I think I'm just used to that with my like film training, but I am sort of curious, like if I was to stay put for a little bit, what could be discovered? Because there's another artist I think of, Whitney Bradshaw. You know, y'all like just sort of stay with these topics for a long time. And I like that because you keep y'all are still interested in it. You keep discovering new things. And so I'm inspired by that.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. I knew when we were like learning different research methods in grad school, I was like, I want to do archival stuff. I don't want to interview people. I don't want to go and like immerse myself and like take memo notes being on like doing ethnography. I was like, I can just go quietly sit in the archive and look at this really cool old stuff.
Yeah.
Like that was like my dream, you know, so
I love it.
I feel very fortunate that it works. I I'm a Libra who doesn't like making decisions, so it works really well for me to be like, here's the one thing. There's lots of cool shit in it, but it's just the one thing.
That's so
I'm like,
smart.
I got it. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for talking to me. As we close, I think also a thing that I think about is I was seeing this guy for a while, and he was always be so impressed with like my job title, my friends' job titles. And he always says like, you guys have jobs that nobody knows about. And I think that about your, what you studied, I was like, nobody says like, hey, did you know you can study queer history? Like they don't say this kind of stuff at the high school, at the career fairs, or like the college fairs. They don't give these as options. So you don't know that you can do it until you hear somebody say, oh, I studied queer history. And then you're like, oh, that makes sense. That's a good idea.
Yeah. I mean, my whole application for the PhD program was not for queer history. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't know I loved it until I discovered it and was like, this is so satisfying. And like, I get to, I don't know, it's like gossipy. Like, I get to like read
That's
people's
true.
private stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, it's a really satisfying thing that I do. I like it.
I love it so much. This has inspired me to like think about more queer histories. I've never spoke about, I don't think anything queer focused on the podcast, which is probably a shame. But how would I know? I don't know. Because I never lead with that.
There's lots of folks doing stuff. Like I recently interviewed Dr. Eric Darnell Pritchard. I know from Rhetoric, like I trained with them when I was in grad school, and they are like have created this like phenomenal biography of like the like fashion creator Patrick Kelly, and like just like has like I'm not doing a traditional biography. The labor that goes into doing that and the amount of interviews you have to do just seems so daunting. But like just to see the stuff that Eric has created is like they've made this like biography and published and talked about it, but also made like a children's book about it.
Wow.
So like talking about like Patrick Kelly, but through like a young children's book, which is like I love.
Yes.
Again, like the public scholarship, I'm like, let's make this accessible in all these different ways.
Yeah. It even makes me think about that even with like the Luther Vandross.
Yeah.
Like his documentary. It's like, it's like that in the same way outside of just like writing. It's like, that's like daunting too. You got to research all that stuff, and not daunting, but I'm sure the filmmaker had a great time, because then you get to go interview all these people and stuff. But, it's always something. The stuff, these projects come with like highs and lows, Oh my goodness. Well, Dr. Kate, thank you so much for being on noseyAF and sharing. Y'all, can I just say I am even more inspired to get into the business of noseying into more people's stories after learning about Lisa Ben. Did you know about Lisa Ben before today? I would love to know. Kate put me on to Lisa Ben. Kate put me on to public scholarship, historiography, so much. I would love saying public scholarship. Can I just tell you that? Like, I think I actually love the levels of this whole scholarship thing, like how some things could be like strictly academic, big word text that like, oh, you have to have a PhD to understand what they're saying. And then on the other side, the same person like Kate could write something that's available to the rest of us. I love that spectrum, like when you can go like across like that. It gives me sort of like Armani Exchange, Toyota, Lexus. Like it's all good. You know what I mean? It's just presented differently, but it's all still the same thing in a way. We didn't really talk about it at all today, Kate and I, but Kate is also a productivity coach. And I just want to shout that out because if you find yourself working on a project and you need some sort of practicality, Kate writes, talks, and coaches all about productivity. And she even put me on to this method called the spoon method, which I guess is sort of like this thought process. You get these spoons, say you have like 5 spoons, right? And so you use the spoons as a measurement for how much capacity you have for the day. I love it. And so I've been learning a lot from Kate these past few months. And I don't know, I also really love the whole Lisa Ben Friends Only project, like how the magazine started out for her friends. Like, what kind of Friends Only project can you make? I would love to know. I have a friend, Scott, who makes mixtapes just for his friends. He makes the mixtape, he sends it out, there's a song list, and I just love it. I just love this so much. It was such a lovely talk today. Anyway, I'm off to think of who I can obsess over next. Maybe there's some sort of baddie in the faith space, like a black version of Sister Karita Kent or somebody like that I can obsess over. I want to find like a faith-based baddie. But I'm also thinking maybe it could be a housewife, like, oh my gosh, like, do I start archiving Nene Leakes? I don't know. I gotta see. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. And if you have thoughts, please write us and let us know. I would love it. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of noseyAF, and I will see you next time. Bye. This has been another episode of noseyAF. I'm your host, Stephanie Graham. What did you think about today's conversation? I would love to hear your thoughts. Head over to the noseyAF website for all the show notes related to this episode. You can also find me on Instagram at Stephanie Graham. What would you know? Or online at missgraham.com, where you can sign up for my newsletter where I share exclusive updates about my studio practice as well as this podcast. Until next time, y'all, stay curious and take care. Bye.